episode number 32 with Dr. Al. Welcome to the Heads Up Poker Podcast. This is Steve Barton, and I'm here with Dr. Al. Mike is in New York right now. He's on vacation, so it's going to be Al and I for this episode. Dr. Alan Schoonmaker is a poker psychologist. He's studied industrial psychology in Berkeley. He's written many books on poker psychology, including The Psychology of Poker, Your Worst Poker Enemy, Your Best Poker Friend, Poker Winners Are Different, The Poker Party Is Over, which is one you wrote after Black Friday, right? And
yep, right after Black Friday.
Right after Black Friday, yeah. And you've also written several other books, Negotiate to Win, A Student Survival Manual, Executive Career Strategy. Quite an accomplished author. I first read some of your stuff when I first started playing right after Moneymaker won. I remember reading you in Card Player and other articles, and then when I saw you on Twitter, I thought, this would be an awesome guest on the show. So thank you very much for coming on.
I am absolutely delighted to be here.
Good. Yeah. So I was reading. You got your degree in industrial psychology, and the only thing I know about that, I remember I was at the gym. This was probably 10 or 12 years ago, and I was talking with a gal on the treadmill next to me, and I asked her what she majored in, and she told me that, industrial psychology, and I thought, what in the heck is that? And the way she described it was, she said, okay, if you look at a McDonald's from the outside, it looks very pleasing. It makes you want to go in. She said, but as soon as you walk into the McDonald's, all you want to do is order your food and get out. The chairs are extremely uncomfortable. They swivel only, 15 degrees, so it's tough to get in and out. The chairs are not comfortable at all. Their color schemes inside just make you want to order your food and then get out. And she gave other examples, like when you walk into a Macy's, there's never any clocks. They want you to stay in the store as long as possible so you buy as much stuff. Is that kind of accurate, or?
Oh yeah, that's
okay.
Wonderful stuff that I wouldn't have thought of, but she's right on. Industrial psychology is really anything having to do with making business work better. Okay. And it's really oriented toward normal adults. For example, if somebody says to me, Doctor, I need some help with my kid, or my wife or whatever, I'm going to say, go see somebody else, because that's not my game.
Okay.
I'm strictly business. I work mostly in selling and negotiating, which is not too far from the McDonald's stuff, but it was more on the face-to-face kind of things.
Okay. So what's an example of your normal client? What would you really?
Well, when I was legitimate, when I was respectable in the good old days,
okay,
I worked with bankers and computer companies on selling and negotiating deals. I did a lot of work with a lot of banks on negotiations and stuff, and
okay.
My emphasis was on how do you adjust your selling or your negotiating approach to the personality of the person you're dealing with and your own personality. And that's really what the psychology of poker was all about as well.
Okay.
That is, I don't try to teach people how to play. That's somebody else's job.
You're not a strategy guy.
Absolutely not. In fact, I think I say on page 3 of my first book, Psychology of Poker, if you want strategic advice, go someplace else.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you how to play ace-jack suited under the gun or whatever.
Yeah.
What I am going to do is say, okay, you got ace-jack suited under the gun, and you know how to play it normally, but what are you going to do if you've got 2 loose passive players to your left, or the blinds are loose aggressive, or you're not playing your A game? In other words, factor into all your decisions, who am I, how am I playing, and who am I against? That's what I deal with.
Okay. That's interesting. What got you into poker? When did you first start playing? Did you start playing 20 years ago? Have you been playing since you were a kid, or?
I started playing poker when I was about 12 or 13.
Okay.
And I was caddying in Englewood Cliffs in a course that doesn't even, Englewood, New Jersey, and that course doesn't even exist anymore. And I found that I loved the game, and I loved the game because I read books from the get-go. I'm a bookish kind of guy, and the typical player, when you're a kid, has no idea at all of what's going on. He knows vaguely that a flush beats a straight, or is it the other way around, but he doesn't know anything at all about odds or about strategy. And so I love poker, and I played a lot of it when I was in the Marines, and I played at Pendleton. When I was stationed at Pendleton, I used to play in this little dump underneath a bar there. I used to go to Gardena, and I absolutely loved poker. And then I quit when I was a grad student, because who's got time as a grad student?
True.
And then I didn't play any poker at all from the time I got my degree, PhD, until 25, 30 years. I was raising a family and so on.
Okay.
And then I moved to New Jersey, where I'd grown up, and they had poker in Atlantic City, and I started playing down there. And I said, you know something? These people aren't much smarter than the teenagers I used to play against. I mean, when you play a 7-card stud, an 8-handed game, and you see 7 people calling on 3rd Street, hey, buddy, you better be able to beat that game.
Yeah.
We didn't have there was not a lot of Holdem in those days. In fact, I didn't start playing Holdem until till I decided to write The Psychology of Poker, and I said, Alan, people were playing Holdem. You better learn how to play it. So
you better learn how to play. Yeah. What'd you play? 7 stud or?
I loved 7 stud. I'd still be playing 7 stud if anybody was playing it. But now you can find like free games in Las Vegas. Nobody plays 7 stud anymore.
No, it's a fun game. I got an opportunity to play it probably less than a dozen times, and I think if I played it 12 times, 10 of those were in Reno, and it was my folks live up in Idaho, and sometimes I'll drive up there, and when I do, I'll stop in Reno as like a halfway point, and spend a night or two in Reno, and they at the Pepper Mill there, they would offer like 1 to 5 stud.
1 to 5 stud. That's what I played. I loved it.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and the part I love about stud is it's, at least for me, it's more mentally draining, probably just because I haven't played it as much, but you have to memorize, like, okay, there's been 4 clubs that have been folded. This guy's showing 2 clubs. Is he drawing to the flush? Does he know that these other guys folded the clubs and he's he has a lot fewer outs than he thinks he does? I love that dynamic of when you look at the cards and they're coming out. He's showing a pair of jacks, but does he know that the other 2's been folded? Or, I like that. I like that. It's definitely different in Holdem than that.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's much more draining because you got to remember all the folded cards.
Yes.
And what I liked about 7 stud was I found it much easier to read hands because you were getting cards one at a time. And so if somebody suddenly got active on 5th Street, it's likely that particular card hit him. And now you could, backwards and forwards. I really loved 7 stud, and I'm sorry that it's a dead game.
Yeah. Maybe it'll come back. If it does, I'd like to get into it. I've tried to get into Pot Limit Omaha, and I just can't. I haven't taken the time to really learn the game, but I think if 7 stud made a comeback like Omaha is doing now, I think I could get into that. It's it's just a fascinating game.
Don't hold your breath. Don't hold your breath.
Very true.
Hey, listen, I'm a limit Holdem player. I tried no limit, didn't do it very well. Didn't like it much. And my friend Roy Cook, who's a terrific a limit Holdem player, is writing a series of articles right now for our magazine, Card Player.
Yeah.
And
I've read a bunch of his articles too. Yeah, he's a good author.
Yeah. And it begins, the very first sentence of the series is, Limit Holdem is dying. And he's been writing, he's got 10, 12 articles out there now about his transition from limit to no limit Holdem. And I'm not saying anything he hasn't said himself in print. It's a very difficult transition.
Yeah.
It's a different mindset. And Roy thought it'd be real easy. He said he made the transition from 7 stud to limit Holdem, no big deal. He said he's had more trouble switching from limit Holdem to no limit Holdem. Much more difficult.
Yeah, I started playing right after, I used to play blackjack, and then when Moneymaker won the World Series, they had changed some rules in the blackjack. They no longer allowed surrender. It was really difficult to find a single deck game, and if you did find a single deck, instead of them dealing almost all the way to the end of the deck, they would only deal out half the deck, and then they'd shuffle it again. So counting cards was completely pointless. And and then I found poker, and I went into limit, and after about 2 or 3 years, I found no limit was just taking over. I was playing 4-8 at the time, and then I sat down at my first 1-2 game, and I remember I sat down with $200, and the first hand I got was Jack 7 in the big blind, and I ended up flopping 2 pair, and somehow in my ignorance got it all in against a guy with a better 2 pair. And that was my first introduction into no limit. And I'm like, man, this 200 would have lasted me forever at a 4-8 table, but in one hand I'm out. I'm like, I have a lot to learn here. This is very different.
Well, that's what an awful lot of people dislike about no limit.
Yeah.
Jim Breyer and I are real good friends, and Jim said what he hates about no limit is that you can get felted. He says, I never get felted. If I get short chips, I buy some more.
Yeah.
Right? If I buy a rack. If I get down to a stacker and a half, I buy another rack or another 3 stacks.
Yeah.
But I don't want to look down there and see nothing in front of me.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody who likes it.
Yeah, it's very different. I'm very comfortable playing no limit now, but I haven't played limit in. You know what? I did play limit about probably 6 months ago. I was in Vegas and I played at the Monte Carlo, actually, where you like to play. I think it was like a 2-7 spread limit game.
2-6 spread limit game.
2-6 spread limit. That's what it was. Yeah.
It's kind of a half-assed mixed. It's got certain elements of no limit because you can vary your bets, but you can't get felted.
Yeah.
And it's got certain elements of limit, which is you got a max bet and so on. I like spread limit. I was playing 210 at the Luxor for a while, and I enjoy that game too.
Yeah, they had that there, and they had it at they had 210 at Excalibur for a while.
Yeah, they had that. The Excalibur had difficulty keeping that game going. They might have it only on 2 nights a week or whatever. I don't know. I haven't been to Excalibur for a while. I still play there. I liked it there. Yeah,
my mom plays their little tournaments all the time. She loves she you know, they have the walkway in between the Excalibur and the Luxor. She runs from one to the next and plays their daily tournaments, whatever we call it.
Oh, okay. So let's stop by and say hi to me.
All right. Right on. We'll do. But yeah, I wonder, could you give a brief synopsis of your the Psychology of Poker? I actually just ordered it on Amazon, so it'll be here sometime between June 6th and August 28th or whatever their thing is.
Whatever it is. Yeah, someplace in there, right.
What should I expect when I read it?
Well, what it's going to say is that the critical dimension in psychology is who are you and who are they, and that psychology comes far after strategy and the odds.
Okay.
I was lucky. I published that book with 2+2, and so I had Mason Malmuth and David Sklansky making sure that I didn't put my foot too deeply in my mouth about strategy.
Yeah.
All right?
Okay.
And I said something like this on page 6 or 7. If Freud played poker and didn't know the odds and strategy, he would go broke. He was the greatest psychologist in human history, but odds and strategy come way before psychology. What psychology deals with is how do you vary your basically optimal strategy to fit how people are playing and how you're playing and how you're feeling.
Okay.
That's what it's all about.
Okay,
and so it goes in some detail about how maniacs or rocks or calling stations or stone killers play differently and what they should do differently. For example, the most important decision in poker is unquestionably which game you choose. If you choose the wrong games, you will lose. If you choose the right game, you will win.
I agree with that, yeah.
Mike Carroll has a really entertaining, Mike, he's a very entertaining guy.
Yes, he is.
And he said, it isn't any good to be the 10th best player in the world if you're playing against the other 9.
Yes, I remember reading that, yeah.
But you can make money if you're the 3 millionth player in the world and you're playing with people who belong in the 5th million.
Yeah.
So the critical issue is you got to be better than your competition, and you also have to be the right kind of better. Which by that
what do you mean by that?
Okay, I'm a conservative player, and I rely very heavily on my ability to read people and to read body language.
Okay.
But I used to play with 2 guys named Eddie. Eddie A, I won't give it another name, was a conservative, solid, winning player, and I could beat the hell out of him.
Okay.
Eddie B was a wild, tricky, heavily losing player, and I couldn't beat him because I had no idea where he was.
Okay.
All right? Yeah, it's a real problem. And right now I'm working on a series of articles, and I'm probably going to write into a book called Why Can't You Beat Small Poker Games? And the biggest reason people can't beat them is that their strategies are wrong. The books, almost all the books tell you how you should play in games with intelligent, smart, knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
And if you're playing Befriend, Holdem, the rules are different, the game is different, the players are different, the costs are different, and you better change your entire strategy. So that's what I work on, is how do you adapt the basic knowledge that you've gotten from these other books to fit the situation you're in.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, we were talking, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, my partner on the show, Mike, he was out playing the series at the WSOP, and he said he was in this tournament, and I haven't been at a table like this in forever. He said everyone was limping, and then you would raise to 4 or 5x, and they would all call. He said, I had no idea what to do. It was very different for him. He didn't last too long in that tournament. But,
and that's a critically important point, which is we need to understand which situations bring out our best and which ones bring out our worst. And stakes and style are 2 of the critically important ones. Stu Unger once said that he could not beat a 5-10 limit Holdem game because he said it wouldn't give him enough interest for him to pay any attention to what was going on. He said he just wouldn't think about it. And I know that lots of people can't beat a game where the stakes are too high, myself included, because we play scared. So you got to find the place that's your sweet spot, that's your comfort zone. And then you got to figure out how well am I doing in my play. One problem poker players have is they lie to themselves. Oh yeah, I'm sure you know a couple of people who lose every year and think they're good players.
Oh, good point. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
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 And one reason they lie, and probably one way they lie, is they kid themselves about their results.
Yeah.
When online poker first started, a man I know was absolutely convinced that he was being cheated. And the reason he was being cheated is that he couldn't lie to himself anymore about how much he was losing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what he would do is he'd buy a rack, and then he'd buy a stack, and then he'd buy 2 stacks, and then he'd cash out for $123, and he thought he made a profit for the night. I'm serious.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's an awful lot of people who are kidding themselves in one way or another. And one of the big things I try to do is get people. I have a coaching business, and one of the most important and difficult jobs is to get people to be honest with themselves about how well they play, what kind of results they're getting, where they get the good results, and so on. Lots of people love ramming, jamming games, and if they take a look, if they kept good records, they realize they lose money in them.
Yeah. I learned to do that a while ago. I'm transitioning now from putting all my data that's in basically just a budget book, that I write down after every session, and I've almost transferred everything over to an Excel spreadsheet in my computer, which makes it so much easier. It adds it all up for you and everything. Yeah, it's so much nicer.
Well, you don't have to use an Excel spreadsheet. If you know how to use it, fine. I'm not smart enough to use Excel, so I use StatKing, which I bought for $30 from Kijelko, and that does all the work for me. All I do is write down where I played, when I played, what I did, what game it was.
What you bought in for, what you cashed out at.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's it called?
And it does all the rest.
What's it called?
It's called StatKing.
StatKing. Okay. And it's just for poker.
That's all. I would assume you could do it for craps or whatever. Yes, you could write in craps results if you wanted to.
Okay. But it's primarily just for gambling, for poker.
That's all it's for.
Okay. Interesting.
All it is a variant on Excel where they've already put the formulas in for you.
Ah, okay. I took an Excel class for 3 months to learn how to do that. I guess StatKing would have been a little bit easier.
Well, I got to tell you, if I tried to learn StatKing, probably Excel, it wouldn't take me 3 months. It would take me about 3 years. I got to tell you,
I went in there with a very specific goal.
Technologically, it really bugs the crap out of me.
I went in there with a very specific goal. I told the teacher exactly what I was doing, and I'm like, I need this formula to do this, and she showed me how to do that, and I'm like, I'm cool. She's like, do you want to learn anything else? I'm like, nope, this is all I'm using it for. It's probably all I ever will use it for.
I tried to use, I'm not sure it was Excel or a different spreadsheet for some thing, and I got totally absurd results, I just made no sense at all. And I'm sure it wasn't the computer fellow. I'm sure it was the idiot, hitting the keys.
The guy behind the keyboard?
Yeah, right.
I was reading some synopsises on your books, and one of them that you wrote, Your Worst Poker Enemy, and there was a little tidbit on there about using intuition versus logic. I guess I've always considered myself a field player. I don't know if it's like you were saying, reading people in body language. But anyways, the tidbit was talking about using intuition versus logic. Can you give an example at the poker table of using your intuition and using logic as maybe it applies to a Holdem hand?
Sure, but before I do that, let me tell you that the critical problem with intuition is that some people have it, but most people don't.
Okay.
Doyle says in Super System, go with your first impression. And my response to that is, if I had Doyle's intuition ability, instinctual abilities, feel abilities, I'd do it too, but I don't. Okay. And Lane Flack is a superb intuitive player. They call him back-to-back Flack because years ago in the World Series of Poker, he won 2 events in a row. And he says he doesn't read books. He doesn't discuss hands with anybody because he doesn't want to mess with his feel. He's a 100% feel player, and how can you argue with his results?
That's a good point.
I haven't got his feel, and most people don't have his feel. Maybe you do, in which case, go with it. But the problem with feel is that I'm certain you've seen this. A guy says, oh, I know you had that. And he doesn't know it at all. He just feels it. And the real problem is that when you say, I know he had ace-king, and you call him because he didn't hit the flop with a turn of the river, and you call him down and he shows he's bluffing, and you say, boy, am I smart. What a wonderful feel. I mean, I am so good. I mean, nobody else could have made that play. And I completely forget the 14 times that I played exactly the same way and I lost.
And you lose. Yeah, yeah.
And the difference between intuition or feel and logic is that logic is a highly visible, slow, step-by-step process, while intuition, you reach a conclusion and you don't really know exactly how you got there. Oh, I just know he's got ace-king, or I know he had aces, or I know he missed his flush, or whatever. And I can't tell you how I got there, and since I can't tell you how I got there, I can't correct it when I make mistakes.
Okay.
While logic is, okay, he raised pre-flop in early position. He wouldn't do that without aces, kings, queens, jacks, or ace-king. All right? So now then I get what he did on the flop, and I say, okay, now that excludes this hand and that hand and that hand. In other words, I slowly reach conclusions, and when I find out I'm wrong, I say, okay, Alan, where did you go wrong? For example, I find out that he really had a pair of sevens. What the hell? Gee, that means I don't really understand the way this guy plays.
Yeah, his range construction was completely wrong from the get-go. Okay.
Right. I mean, I just screwed up.
Yeah.
But the important point now is because I've got new data, I can change my thinking ability. So the next time he raises in early position, I can say, okay, he has sevens or higher pair and these high cards. In other words, it's constantly evaluating the process of your reasoning that enables you to reach conclusions. Just by chance, this is a major factor in a book I wrote with David Sklansky. David and I wrote a book called DUCY, and it's just the letters D-U-C and Y with a question mark.
With a question. Oh, I just thought it was DUCY. No, it's D-U-C-Y.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we screwed up with the title. We screwed up badly, but that's another story. And we make a very big deal about the importance of learning math knowledge, math thinking, math logic. And when my wife was a medical resident, she had problems with diagnosis. And I said, well, it's really the same as what you did in school, where you had a railroad train leaving station A and a railroad train leaving station B, and where do they meet? And she said, well, I did that in high school. I said, yeah, but you didn't learn the logic. Because the logic of those math problems, the word problems in math, is that once you set them up, the rest is easy.
Yeah.
It's setting the process up, and that's what logic is all about. It's thinking about issues, questions, in a clearly defined step-by-step process, which allows you to correct your mistakes.
Yeah, I read a little excerpt from. Do you pronounce the book D-U-C-Y or do you pronounce it DUCY?
D-U-C-Y. David was very active on the 2+2 forum, still is. And he used to say, after he gave an example or a comment, do you see why? And his fan club kind of converted that to the letters D-U-C-Y, and that's why we use it as our title.
And that's why there's a question. But okay,
it wasn't the smartest.
Well, that's pretty clever now that I know that.
It wasn't the best titling decision because when David and I went on radio shows, they'd say, well, let's talk about DUCY. We said, no, it's not DUCY, etc.
Do you see why?
Okay. It's an acronym. But people...
Yes, I get it now. I get it. I like it. I was also reading on your best poker friend. You talk about learning efficiency, and I really enjoy teaching. I've taught at the local college and at my work for probably the better part of a decade. Wow. And I remember reading in the book. Have you read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I don't think so. You referred to that in your email, and I believe I have not read it.
Okay. It's Robert Kyoshi, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Anyways, he talks in there about whoever can learn the fastest wins. And he said basically in our society now with the internet, and I mean, just using your phone now, you can figure out any little trivia fact that you'd want to learn in about 30 seconds. And he says whoever learns the fastest wins. And at least from my perspective, I think poker is the same way. If you can master a concept faster than your competition, then you're going to have an edge over them. What are some tips you can give our listeners for improving the speed of their learning?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that it matters a whole lot about how fast you learn a concept. What's really where speed does count is how fast you can apply it when you're in the poker game. For example, let's say it took you a month to learn something that I learned in a week, but you apply it better than I do. You're going to do better than I do at the tables. And
okay, for those 3 weeks you have an edge, but then after that,
I got an edge for 3 weeks, but after that you're going to kick my ass.
Okay.
Mason Malmuth wrote a terrific article many years ago in one of his books, and he said there are players who are consistently better than others just because they think faster, and they therefore can consider more variables than we slower guys can. Mason was not putting himself in one of the fast guy things. He said there are guys that just have this ability to do, for example, mathematical calculations that in their head you and I would need a calculator for, right? And that's a terrific edge because poker is a very narrow game. We have to act quickly. You can't say, wait a second, I want to, if you give me 2 minutes, I'll check it out on the internet and I'll get back to you. No, I got 15 seconds to act. If I don't act, the deal is going to move beyond, right?
Yeah.
And on online, it's even faster than that because they'll time you out. So it's important to be able to apply concepts quickly, but it's not too important how fast it takes to learn. Now let's talk about learning efficiency.
Okay.
The data are absolutely clear on this point. Active learning is immeasurably more efficient than passive learning. And by active learning, I mean that you do something as opposed to you just read. I wrote a book a long time ago called The Student Survival Manual. And I
saw that one.
I talked a lot about learning efficiency. And the height of stupidity is lectures, is listening to a lecture. Because most people don't realize this, but lectures exist as an instructional medium because before the printing press, more than 5 centuries ago, books were incredibly expensive. And so the word lecture comes from the Latin verb to read, and so a man would stand in front of an audience and read, and they would write the book by hand.
Wow.
Once they invented the printing press, the lecture became obsolete, and 500 years later it's still being used as the primary instructional medium. And what you really want to do is not listen to lectures about it. You want to do things. That's why math is probably the most intelligently taught subject all through school. They don't tell you, here's how you add, all right, here's how you subtract. What do? They make you do 27 problems in addition before they let you do any problems in subtraction. Right?
Yeah.
And you take engineers. Engineers from the get-go are applying their concepts. They're actively learning. I could give you a book on how to read French, but it's a hell of a lot better if you have to talk French if you go to a total immersion class because you're doing something.
Yeah, if you go to France and you just put yourself there and you have to learn how to ask where the bathroom is. And like that, 'cause
I got to tell you a funny thing about that. I met my wife in French class. I got better grades than she did. When we went to Paris, who was the one doing where's the bathroom, etc.? She was, because she spoke it better than me Well,
Yeah.
I could read wonderfully. I could write intelligently. I could tell you when to use the pluperfect subjunctive. I just couldn't find the restroom.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's one thing I learned teaching out at the college. My full-time job as a fireman, and I used to teach out at the college. And when I found out when students learn the fastest was when, for example, if we'd have to throw a ladder up to a two-story building, I would show them how to do it, and then I would watch them do it. And then the third time around, I would have them tell me what they're doing while they're throwing the ladder.
That's a perfect example of active learning. That's active learning where they're not only doing it, but they're also understanding the process and articulating. That's terrific learning.
Exactly. Yeah. I would have them tell me exactly what you're doing as you're doing this. Okay, sir, I'm looking up to make sure that there's no power lines so I don't get electrocuted. Then I'm going to spot the ladder this far away from the building so that I don't have to readjust it. I'm going to extend the fly. I have them say what they're doing as they're doing it. And that's when they really instead of them having to throw it 15 times before they got it right, they might have to throw it 3 or 4. And maybe, yeah. I understand what you mean by active learning. As you apply it to poker, go through a hand history and actually work out the math and work out the problems instead of just watching a video passively.
Oh, let's go a little further than that. All you folks out there, if you get to Las Vegas, we have an absolutely wonderful group that's been going on for almost 20 years now, and we started in Atlantic City. It's called the Wednesday Poker Discussion Group. You can Google it if you like. It meets every Wednesday from 2 till 5 at Ricardo's Restaurant at the corner of Decatur and Flamingo. And that's what we do.
Wait. You're right by PT's Pub then, right?
I'm not sure.
The Decatur and Flamingo. There's a group of poker buddies that we'd meet down at the bar at PT's, and it's right on the corner there.
Okay. It's on the northwest corner. All right, and
northwest corner.
And what happens is lots and lots of active learning, where a guy says, "I have this hand that I played yesterday," and he starts to tell them the story, and it almost always, particularly for somebody who's new to the group, that he hasn't done a nearly good enough job of keeping track of all the facts. For example, he said, well, I have pocket aces and I raised, and people immediately say, all right, how big was your stack? How big was his stack? What position did he have? How does he play? And the guy says, well, I don't know.
I don't remember.
Yeah, right. So it's all...
But I had aces. I want to know how to play this hand.
Right. Tell me how to play this hand. And the answer is, I don't know enough to tell you. If you've got 4 big blinds, and then the only way to play is shove all in, for Christ's sakes, all right? Yeah. But if you're very, very deep, I don't think you should shove all in because you're only going to win is the blinds, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And that's what a lot of it is all about, is active learning. Now, of course, once in a while they get somebody comes in. Patricia Cardner was in there to talk about her recent book. Slansky's talked there. Mike Sexton's come by. Mason Monmouth's going there. Eric Lindgren's going there. I mean, there's lots of good people. Linda Johnson's a regular. But the real learning isn't listening to people. It's doing things and getting comments on it.
What next time I'm in Vegas, I'm going to stop by and see you guys. So it's the Wednesday Poker Discussion Group. It's from 2 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday, I guess. And what's the name of the restaurant?
Ricardo's. It's a Mexican restaurant.
Ricardo's. Okay. And you guys just sit around, get a big table, and just talk poker?
Well, they've assigned us a room, and you order off the menu. It's a moderately priced menu. You don't have to spend $10-12 for lunch. Big deal,
Well, that sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's on the corner of
northwest
Decatur
corner,
and Flamingo.
Decatur and Flamingo. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, our little watering hole was on the southeast corner. So it's just kind of catty corner right across the street.
Well, that's where
next time you drive by there this Wednesday.
Okay.
Today's Wednesday. If you're going there today, then look over there. There's PT's Pub. It's a total dive. You have to ring the little buzzer before they unlock the door.
They're all over town. Yeah, they got lots of. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, I'll be stopping by to see you guys. That sounds like fun.
Glad to have you. And all you folks out there, you are welcome to join us. We have people from literally all over the world coming in. The regular visitors from places like Japan and Romania and Argentina. You know, you're welcome. We're glad to have you.
That's cool. That's cool. I'll put a link in the show notes so people can click on it and then
Okay.
find the information. Right on. Let's see, your book, Poker Winners Are Different. You talk about choosing the information that you give to others. And, I know when I sit down at a table, I used to be pretty stoic and I wouldn't talk much. And I've learned to open up quite a bit. And now I'm pretty chatty at the table. And, when I sit down, one of the first things I do is I start talking to the players on my immediate right, because I figure they're going to affect me the most.
No.
And then I talk to the players on my left.
Stop.
The
people you need to understand are the people on your left. Mike Caro coined a term years and years ago called the Caro law of position, which is money moves clockwise around the table. Lifetime, you will beat the people to your right and you will lose to the people on your left. And he says, make friends with the people on your left and declare war on the people on your right.
I guess I always looked at it like I'm going to be taking the money from the people on my right, so I want to befriend them so they don't get irked every time I 3-bet them. But I kind of like your logic better.
Okay, because
that's a good point.
Wait a second. What's that old saying? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah. That
was Lyndon Johnson. The guy you want to be friends with is the guy who can take your money.
Okay.
And you don't, if you're sitting there, you really want me, if I'm on your left and I'm a really nasty guy, you want me to say, what the hell? I can see he's having a bad day, so I won't put him all in. Right?
Yeah.
And it's usually not that conscious a process, but it's unconsciously we are easier on our buddies than we are on strangers or people we dislike.
That's true. Yeah. I had an instance like that. I was playing at Venetian a couple of weeks ago.
Terrific room.
What's that?
It's a terrific room.
Oh, it is. It's one of the best, I think. It's awesome. And I had just been completely card dead, and I was down in a tournament, and I'd just been floating around 10 to 15 big blinds for probably 3 hours, and somehow never getting called every time I shoved all in. The one time I did get called, I had ace king, and so the other guy, we ended up chopping the pot. And this was another one of those where I was in middle position, and I looked down at 7-8 of hearts, and I got to shove it, because I got 11 big blinds, and I could tell the guy next to me, he had me beat. He was on the button, and he probably looked down at something like king jack, and he knows it's a call. And at that point, I said something to the effect of like, "Oh, there's no shame in folding. Come on, we're having fun. Just let it go. Let me win this one." And then he kind of laughed and tossed his cards in.
God bless
so I think
him.
There's that.
God bless him.
That element too, if you can be friendly with the table and they kind of want to keep you there, just maybe not necessarily because you're entertaining, but just because you're a likable guy, it can win you pots.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can remember a buddy of mine was down. He was in the small blind, and he had about 42 cents left in the tournament. And we're getting very, very close to the chopping point. It was a free roll, and the way free rolls often run is that when you get down to a certain number, they chop automatically. And somebody was on the button and looked at him and said, "I'll let you go." And he folded his hand, because my friend would have had to call, because he was he was all in, it was blinds and it was antes, and he probably would have gotten busted. And as it is, he's down the button. He's going to get a whole bunch of free cards, free hands, and he backed his way onto the final table. And he knew he knew that he got the same kind of break you got.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. What's your typical routine when you sit down at the table? Are you pretty chatty, or are you kind of a little bit more reserved, or what do you do? It sounds like you make friends with the people to your left.
I am kind of a chatty guy, as you may have noticed, and
So am I.
I have a really weird attitude, which is that if you're a poker player and you're trying to make money, you're in the entertainment business. I wrote an article about this not too long ago. And what my job is, part of my job, is to make people feel comfortable. And that's especially true for the weaker players, which in Las Vegas, generally speaking, means the tourists. And so I try to create a friendly atmosphere, and I introduce people. Most people have no idea what I'm doing, but I remember your name. If you sit down, I'll say, hi. Okay, over here, this is Harry, that's Bob, that's Tom, that's Joe. And that makes a fundamentally different atmosphere where people feel comfortable. And I had a local grinder who said to me once, Al, I don't need to be introduced. And I just let it go, because he's a nice guy. He just didn't understand that if the weak players are comfortable, they'll stick around longer. And if they feel uncomfortable, they'll go someplace else where they do feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So I make a very big deal out of introducing myself and introducing other players. This is particularly true when the game's getting started, when we're 4, 5, 6 players. And hey, when you start a game, which I often do because I play mornings, it's hard to get the game going. And you really want that the 2 tourists plus the 4 regulars, you want those 2 tourists to stick around. And they don't want to play six-handed. And so if I say, Joe, I played yesterday. Joe's from Toronto, and this is Harry over here. He's from California, and you know me, of course. And Barbara over there, she's visiting us from San Diego. Okay, it makes a hell of a lot of difference. And so people stick around. The games go. It's a big deal. What you really want is you want people to be comfortable. And when I say that to people, they look at me like, what kind of touchy-feely idiot are you? And the answer is, no, I'm a psychologist, sir. And my job is to make people comfortable. Because if people are comfortable, the game's going to last longer. And the game's going to be friendlier. And the game's going to be more relaxed. I don't want the game to be war. Because if the game is war, nobody enjoys it. Everybody takes it too seriously. Hey, my friend Nolan Dalla wrote a wonderful article years ago, or he gave a talk years ago, on working a room. And he said that what he looks for as he wanders around the table is, where are they laughing and having and joking and having a good time? Where are they playing seriously? He said, I want to be where they're having a good time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You want to be where they're wearing flamboyant clothing and ordering drinks.
Yeah. And it's not just going there passively. Again, I'm an active guy. I try to create that atmosphere. I don't drink. But I do try to get people to feel like this is a relaxed, comfortable, we're here to have a good time.
Yeah, I like that. You and I talked on the phone briefly before we got on, and I remember I can't remember it word for word, but
you can't?
You talk.
My God, you don't know how deeply you hurt me.
Well, we talked about when to quit. You know, I gave the example of I'd been playing the Sunday grind, you know, and I've been playing online for over 8 hours, and I finished my last tournament. I played something like 3,000 hands in 15 tournaments, and you know, it was a slight losing session for the day, and I was tallying up all my results, and it was, 10 or 11 at night, and I look and I see there's a hyper turbo, and first place could put me well within a positive day, and I thought, you know what, it's just tomorrow's a new day, let it go, and go to bed, You talked about when's the time to quit, and knowing the time to quit, and having the discipline to do it. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, let me first congratulate you for quitting.
Okay, thank you.
The first point I want you to recognize is that you recognized I am not playing my A game.
Yeah.
And most people aren't good at recognizing that. I cannot tell you how often I have told people, Joe, go home. And I can see they've had too much to drink, or they're angry, or they're literally falling asleep at the table. What is and they know who I am. They know I'm Dr. Al. They know I'm a psychology prof. They know that I know what I'm talking about. What is the usual reaction when I tell people to go home?
They don't want to go?
They don't want to go. I've even had people say, I'm on tilt. And I say, well, then go home.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to stay here. That's the first thing you did right. The second thing you did right is you did not utter the dumbest words in poker. The dumbest words in poker are, I've got to get even.
Yeah.
And you said, well, if I won this hyper turbo, it would be positive. And the answer is, who the hell cares? It's not about what you do tonight, tomorrow, next Tuesday, last Wednesday. What it's about is how do you finish up at the end of the year or at the end of a lifetime. And the desire to get even causes countless mistakes. It causes us, for example, if I really want to get even, I can't get even playing solid, steady poker because I'm so far behind. So I'm going to play looser and more aggressively, trying to get even. And I'm sure you know people like this. They lose a buy-in playing whatever in poker. Then they lose another buy-in playing another in poker. And then maybe they've lost a total of 2.5, 3 buy-ins, and they realize there's no way I can get even in this game. So they go to a bigger game, or worse yet, they go to the craps table, slot machines, roulette, whatever, trying desperately to get even. And if you do that, it's very, very easy to blow your bankroll.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know people who've done it.
Well, if you've listened to the show, my partner on the show would be.
I don't need to listen to your partner on the show. I live in the world of poker. I got a zillion poker friends, and many of them have been busted. I have been sitting in my little 2-6, 4-8, 6-12 game, and I had seen people who used to play 30-60 sitting down there trying to grind up enough money to get back into the big games. And when I say what happened, they say, well, I went on tilt, and I blew my bankroll. How long did it take you? Day and a half. No.
Wow.
How long did it take to build it? 3 years. All right. Yeah, and so what you didn't do is you did not yield to the desire to get even. All right, so how do we make the decision to quit? The critical issue is to monitor the players and monitor ourselves. And we got to look around and say, given the way I am playing now, given the way I feel now, given the quality and style of these players, is it plus or minus EV for me to continue? And if the answer is it's minus EV, then there's only one thing to do. Good night, folks.
Yeah, call it a day.
And yet most people can't do that because, I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people can't do that because A, they underestimate their opponents, and B, they overestimate themselves. For example, I am sure you have heard people say, you're right, I am angry, but it doesn't affect my play.
Yeah.
Right? Well, it does affect your play, sir. In fact, if anybody goes to Facebook, look at my name. I got 2 articles on there right now called Destructive Emotions. And it talks about how emotions cause 2 things to happen. It causes us to play worse and our opponents to play better. And that's the worst thing we can do.
Yeah. No, that's pretty well put. Huh. I remember reading your winner's laws, and you had 3 of them. And
Three? I got 37 in the book. I can't. Which ones are we talking about?
Oh, you got 37. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I must have read the synopsis.
After almost every chapter, there's a little section of 2, 3, 4 winners' laws. Which ones are we talking about?
Okay. It says, number 1, keep focused on what you should do now to maximize your long-term profits. Number 2, accept that lost money, time, and effort are gone forever. They're like money in the pot. It doesn't matter who put it in. What matters is who takes it out. Invest your money and time only when you can profit from it. Mm-hmm. And number 3 is pay attention to what you are thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what we're talking about is what you referred to a person who was on your show recently. We're talking about poker is really all about now.
Yes. Yeah. Ben Reason talked about that. He meditates before every session so that he can get present in the moment.
Okay. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, which is,
okay,
the pot has $72 in it, and it really doesn't matter whether I put in $12 or $36. The fact is, that's the amount of money in the pot. Doesn't matter where it came from. And what really matters is, what are my probabilities of getting that pot? And if I am going to play differently when it's $36 of my money than I do when it's $12 of my money, then I'm making a mistake. I'm not dealing with the now. It didn't matter where the money came from. And we have to keep and again, I'm sure I'm consistent with your previous guests, we have to be not just before the session, but in every single hand. I'm talking about now. What should I do now in order to maximize my EV? Maybe now I should quit. Maybe now I should change seats. Maybe now I should become tighter or more aggressive. I don't know. It all depends on the now. But that's what poker is all about. It depends on the situation. And I'm saying you can't focus on the situation if your mind is cluttered with, what am I going to do next Tuesday? I'm losing $147 for the night. I'm really in a horrible state of mind because that guy over there is a effing idiot. All those things are distracting me from focusing on now. I might add the best book on focusing on now is not mine. It's Larry Phillips, The Zen of Poker, or Zen in the Art of Poker.
I've heard of that one. I haven't read it yet.
That's one of the things he talks about. And Zen, I'm not a Zenist, I'm not a Buddhist, but I like this book. Yeah.
Okay. I've my wife's recently got into that, and she's gotten into meditating. And our guest last week was Ben Reason, and he's really into meditating. And what I do, I listen to a hypnosis tape before I play that's specifically for poker. I don't know if you've heard of Elliot Rowe.
Yeah, of course. Elliot Rowe. Elliot works with Dr. Patricia Cardner, who is my buddy. I had lunch with Patricia. I don't know, 10 days ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, her and I are friends on Twitter.
Okay. Oh, okay. Nice lady.
Small world. Small world.
Well, come on. We're in the world of poker. We're serious about poker. We're in the media. What the hell? Of course we know each other.
Yeah, of course. That's cool. I'll have to read that one. But,
actually, Tricia wrote a terrific book called Positive Poker. She wrote it with Jonathan Little, and I just had the pleasure. I went to a launch party, a week, 10 days ago, at the World Series of Poker. She and a really star-studded group have written a book called How to Excel in Holdem. And the authors were this tall guy you never heard of, Phil something or other, Helmuth and Mike Sexton.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so Tricia's traveling in very exalted company these days. I love seeing her having a picture taken with Phil on this side and Mike on the other side. Yeah.
That's cool. Good deal. Well, thank you very much for coming on. This has been a lot of fun.
I loved it, sir.
If people wanted to get a hold of you for coaching or get your books, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to do it is to go to my Facebook page, and got my name, or you can send me an email, Alan N. Schoonmaker. That's S-C-H. Oh, pardon me. I better spell the whole name because I spell my name A-L-A-N. Then there's another N. Then there's my last name, Schoonmaker. S-C-H-O-O-N-M-A-K-E-R. 42 at gmail.com. Alan N. Schoonmaker at gmail.com. Or you can call me, 702-326-7994.
Good deal. And what's your Facebook page? Just your name,
Just
Alan Schoonmaker?
just my name. I got several Facebook pages. One with David Sklansky for our book. One's a business page. Once you get there, you can navigate around. It's easy,
Sounds good.
and fun.
I'll put links down in the show notes. So if
Thank you.
people want to contact you, they can just click on it and it'll take them right to your page.
Thank you.
Right on. Okay, and thank you for tuning in. If you want to get a hold of us, get us on Twitter at HUP Podcast, Facebook, Heads Up Poker Podcast. Check out our blog, headsuppokerpodcast.blogspot.com, and you can email us at headsuppokerpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in, and here is your weekly motivational speech.
One problem, the violin. Because to do what you do, you've got to be a world-class violinist. Because if you don't, when you're moving around and being thrown around and still trying to play, you end up doing what you did, and that's missing loads of notes. And there were times when it sounded to me like a bunch of rats being strangled. Seriously, that bad. But you're not good enough, I don't think, to get away with flying through the air and trying to play the violin at the same time.
I don't think what you're doing right now is enough to fill a theater in Vegas.
That much movement made you not as great as you were.
Anytime there's a change to be made, you have to realize that there's somewhere else you want to be. And I wanted basically to be happy.
You can't do anything without faith. It's impossible to accomplish anything without faith. So I need you to believe there is still time. As long as there's breath in your nostrils, as long as you can wake up in the morning. The first step before anybody else in the world believes it is you have to believe it. So I need you to believe.
Because if you're willing to go through all the battling you got to go through to get to where you want to get, who's got the right to stop you? I mean, maybe some of you guys got something you never finished, something you really want to do, something you never said to somebody, something. And you're told no, even after you pay your dues. Who's got the right to tell you that? Who? Nobody. It's your right to listen to your gut. It ain't nobody's right to say no after you earn the right to be where you want to be and do what you want to do.
You got to do what you was called to do. You got to do what you were born to do. You got to do what works for you, because if you do what works for you, you're going to blow up. It's in your DNA. It's who you are.
Knocked down, you get back up, and you get back up, and you get back up, and you continue to throw shit against the wall.